Kia koutou whānau, welcome to another edition of Big Hairy News. Big Hairy Chewy, kia ora to you, sir.
Good evening, Pat. How are you?
Good evening to you, sir. I'm doing very, very well. Very, very well indeed. Yeah, I am actually. It's been an interesting old day. Got to you paid your dog registration yet? Due tomorrow. Dog registration?
Oh, is it due tomorrow? I thought it was
tomorrow,
due in like a month. Okay. Well,
no,
I guess I'll be doing that tomorrow.
Yep, paid my dog registration. Big thing. Went to the supermarket 3 times because I forgot things on the 2 other times I went there. And had a good old day actually, picking up kids, dropping them off from school. Caught one of my kids skipping class today. That was always fun. Yeah. Someone's in trouble. Someone's grounded for the weekend with no technology. Yeah, so pretty good. Lots going on at the moment. There's some things I want to share with you before we start the show. I came across a pretty interesting little video. July the 4th is next week. Of course, it's an American holiday. It's all about Guy Fawkes, and no, it's not Guy Fawkes, but fireworks and stuff. So I thought I'd share this little treat with you before we go. So this is some guys on the front lawn of America playing with some fireworks. You don't see it very well, but where that guy in the blue there is bent over, they've got a rocket in the ground about to shoot up in the air. And I just thought, this is worth starting off the show with because you'll probably enjoy it, Chewy. So over there, look, they've lit it. Oh, the boys are running away from it, but of course, it's in the ground a bit too much. And mum saves the baby, but it's not over yet. Wait for it.
Wow.
Yep. Happy July the 4th, people. I just thought it today and I thought it was absolutely outstanding. And I just wanted to share that with the whānau tonight.
See, you don't have to go to some fancy war zone to experience being cluster bombed. Now you can do it at home.
Yeah. Yep. Something else as well. I'll tell you something that I've been watching on Netflix the last. I've got a really interesting philosophical question for you, Chewy. All right, like genuinely interesting philosophical question for you. I'll play for you a little bit about something that I've been watching on Netflix in the last week or so. It's a good series. It's a reality show series. And it's about emergency departments in New York. It's called Emergency NYC. I'll play a little bit in the background. It's really about, a couple of hospitals in America. And it's one of these typical, they follow them on the street. They bring them in. They work on them. It's got neurological issues. There is gynecological issues. It's actually a really engaging series. It's called Emergency NYC. Here's the philosophical...
Where do they take the FBOS card, though?
Yeah, the thing that I found most interesting about it, here in Dunedin, and I'm sure you see it often, Chewy, sadly I see it too, the helicopter coming in and landing on the roof of the building and then going in. And one of these episodes, you notice the helicopter lands at an airport and then an ambulance picks up the person and takes them to the hospital. So I thought that was weird and interesting, but there you go. So here's the philosophical question. Because one of the doctors said it in this series and it's made me go, that's a really interesting question. You know the Hippocratic Oath, yeah?
Yeah.
Hippocratic Oath in part says do no harm. It was a passing comment from the doctor. It wasn't a focal point. The doctor said, I sometimes think about that when I'm cutting into healthy tissue to remove a healthy organ. And I went, holy shit, think about that. So if the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm, but you're removing the kidney from a healthy person to donate to the other person, aren't you by definition doing harm to the healthy person? And I'd never thought of it before. And I went, oh my goodness, I think that's quite an interesting question and debate to have. Because if the Hippocratic Oath says do no harm, how can they do something that's going to be detrimental to a healthy person? And I was like, my mind was like, sounds like we have a debate here.
And this is why they focus so much on ethics in medicine.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, you go to
Mm.
become a doctor and that sort of thing, they have huge swathes of it devoted to ethics, because you do get questions like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the answer. Like, my gut reaction is that it's more about the overall good being done,
Yeah.
and the fact that someone is consenting to having it done, kind of comes into it. But yeah, honestly, I wouldn't know what the proper, ethics and medicine answer to that is.
Yeah, and obviously I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't be having, organ donors, but, when the doctor said it, I kind of did what you just did when you went, oh, it's like, yeah, that's an interesting debate to sort of have about it. Is it the overall good, or is it the overall harm? In other words, there's a positive to it because of the person getting the new kidney, or whatever it is. But then you actually stop and think, hang on, if it's do no harm, what about plastic surgery? And what about those sorts of things as well, which I had thought of before, but it just, I don't know, just put it in a different context, and it made me think, Chewie. It made me think.
Well, we can't have too much of that.
No, unless you're in the National Party. Speaking of thinking, maybe one day you might think that you want to come on board as one of our patrons. See what I did there? Just a little thing.
That was smooth.
Thanks. And it's a re-welcome, a hugely re-welcome to Kooky Nick, who re-signed up to be a super patron overnight. I think Nick went off to Europe for like a 3-month holiday or sabbatical or something like that. Went overseas, and so stopped being a patron for a while, which is obviously all good and understandable. And just, I think, last night or maybe this morning, Nick signed back up as a patron. You can see him there under the super patron. So welcome back into the fold, Nick. We appreciate having you there. If you're a lurker, if you're someone who likes what we do, if you appreciate what we do and you want to get on board, you can very simply do it by heading to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And I have to say to you, I don't have it up for you yet, because sort of officially I said we'd do it from the 1st of July. I wonder if I can bring it up. I've been building the Shopify, mate. I've been building the Shopify over the day. Is it here? I wonder if I can. My problem is if I show it,
it'll break.
Maybe I'll show a whole bunch of things that I'm not supposed to be showing, like all my personal logins or some shit like that. I don't know. And I don't want to show the URL because I'll get a proper URL. I think I can show this. Oh, get out of there. So this is something that I've been working on. You guys who are regular lurkers and regular viewers will know about this. There you go. T-shirts going up. T-shirts in there. So I started building on this today. It's not live yet, so you're not able to actually do anything with it yet. However, expect by the 1st of July that to be active, ready to go. It's very, very simple. Obviously, we're not spending any money really or a lot of time setting it up, but you know what it's about. It's about supporting the channel and also having your voice heard out in public. If you think if the left vote, the left wins, then walk around on a billboard with it up until the election. If you think that Luxon is not actually a businessman, he's just a board member, then you can walk around in that up until the election time as well. And those will definitely be available in the weekend. There's also going to be hoodies as well. 3 colours for this one. There's going to be like a pale blue, a sky blue, which will have white text on it. There'll be a black t-shirt with white text, and there'll be a white t-shirt with black text. And I think every time we do a drop, we'll have a black option, a white option, and a colour option. So the colour option this time around is sky blue. And I made it sky blue because I kind of thought actually a sky blue shirt with white text about Luxon, you could kind of probably slip into some national party meetings like that if you wanted to, because you're wearing a blue t-shirt and people may not read the text on the front that says not a businessman, just a board member. Just say, if you wanted to do that. Alrighty, so that's us for today. Anything else you want to get into? Anything in the chat there we want to say g'day to, hello to?
Oh, what have we got here? We've got DIY Guru talking about recently gave up a kidney to cancer. It would be nice to know that I have options. Arrest J cases on one level, surgery would be causing harm, but again for the greater good. Greater good. Sorry, it's a Cornetto trilogy reference there. Yes, absolutely. And just people admitting to being late. Oh dear. Bad people. Bad karma. All right, guys. Let's have a look at the story that we started talking last night, because I think we can draw some more conclusions about the Kiri Allan situation at the moment.
because it feels much more of a beat up now that we have more information than we talked about last night. We still don't have all the information, so I don't want to be like, this is the final answer now. There'll be more information to come out, but we are going to have a look at what has come out in the last 24 hours. Kiri Allan, who returned to Parliament on Thursday after taking mental health leave, has said she never had any formal allegations made against me in any way, shape or form. Now, straight away, my radar goes up with the word formal. Because, what does that mean? Was there thousands of informal? I'm not saying that's the case, but, politicians pick their words very clearly, but we'll go on. At the same time, Stuff was investigating. The National Party was also asking questions. MP Simeon Brown, your favourite, Chewy, the party's public services spokesman, had lodged an Official Information Act request with the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. And they talked about that there was a text message that's come out, and the text message is revealing. One text message that was asked for in the OIA, the Official Information Act, fell within the scope of his request, but MBIE boss Carolyn Tremaine said that she was withholding that text under a clause that exists to allow free and frank exchange of opinions within government. Now, I love the idea of this, that you can have a free and frank exchange of opinions. That means you can have a good old fucking row in your political office for the sake of coming to a conclusion. Do you know what I'm saying? So this idea of a free and frank exchange, and that actually being okay and be allowed to be had in a situation of an office, I think is a great idea. And I actually think, as you know, Chewy, as you'll know if you're watching or listening, is that sometimes the written word doesn't come across as well when you don't have context. But in the context of a, quote, free and frank exchange of opinions, I think that that's a great thing to be able to have in government. And I think that it's also great to be able to withhold that, should that perhaps paint an accurate picture of what was actually going on. Now, we'll be fair with that. If it was national, we'd be saying the same thing. Stuff's been told by two sources, because now we want to know what was in those text messages. Stuff's been told by two sources that the messages came from Deputy Chief Executive Robert, and I'm going to go with Peugeot. In a written statement, Peugeot said that the text, quote, does not express concerns about staff working in the office, and therefore no follow-up action was needed. So one of the texts basically says, it's been reported, nothing to see here. He also said there is no correspondence, formal or informal, between him and the current private secretary for regional development in Allan's office. Since February, that refers to Allan's behaviour. Peugeot also said no formal complaints had been made by staff about Allan's conduct, and no staff were removed from the office because of concerns. He added that he has good relationship with staff and is confident they would share with him any concerns about safety and well-being. Again, sounds like nothing to see here. Stuff sought further clarification from Peugeot, and he replied, in my role, I have informal discussions with all of my staff, including our private secretaries that support our ministers, and I consider these discussions to be withheld under Section 92GL, I think it is, of the Official Information Act 1982. That'll be the free and frank clause, I'm sure. To maintain the effective conduct of public affairs through the expression of free and frank expression of opinions. I have no concerns with these discussions around culture and treatment of staff in Minister Allan's office, and if there were, and these were shared with me, I would take the appropriate action to action this. Now, we're going to have a look at the News Hub story about this as well. I actually think the details I've given you now, Chewy, is probably even more in depth than the News Hub story. So before we do that, which is going to kind of echo some of the things I've just said with a little bit more, any thoughts around what we've heard?
Like, obviously on last night's show, I'd really only just come across it at that stage. And I've been thinking about this and reading about it today. This does seem, to my eyes at least, to be a massive beat up. This just, like, I don't like the fact that this apparently happened last year. I don't like the timing of it, that it's popped out when Hipkins is away in China, which, you know, if he comes back with a good deal, that's a huge thing, right? So let's take the gloss off that. It just seems too, and I know a lot of people are throwing this around, obviously a reference to Nikki Hager's book, Dirty Politics. It does seem like dirty politics.
Well, when you hear that story, right, and you hear that there are people who are said to have been the ones who are either wronged or who are the people who the wronged have been reporting to, who are saying nothing to see here. And in the story I'm going to play from Newshub, it also says that basically the department, and I think it's DOC, is it? The department that was allegedly wronged, or people within that department who were allegedly wronged that we heard about last night, all with one voice today have said, no, everything's fine. That's when I start to go, okay, let's layer these things on top of each other. And now I think it's a bit easier to go, it feels like dirty politics to me. Last night, we'd only had the story for literally 2 hours. So as you know, I made no comment. But tonight, I think you can look at it and go, the evidence that's coming out now, the opinions that are coming out now tend to lean towards there being nothing to see here. And so therefore I go, Occam's razor, why is this happening now? What's the most likely scenario? Yeah, Chippy's overseas. Yeah, is National trying to stir things up while Chippy's overseas to then go, it's what do they call them? A something of chaos or whatever. Look, Chip, the Prime Minister steps away and it all falls apart. I think there is more credence to that argument today than there was 24 hours ago, Chippy. I mean, Chippy.
Yeah. I'm not Chippy. I'm not China.
I just gave you a boosting to the Prime Minister. So let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at the story from Newshub. I've just given you a whole bunch of details, but there is a few more in here, and let's see what they had to say tonight.
Kiri Allan faced an awful lot of questions today, fronting once.
Happy to be back at work.
Twice.
Hey team, shall we go round two?
3 times 4.
There has never been any allegations put to me, which is, again, why I've found this story challenging.
The allegations relate to reports that leadership in ministries raised concerns about the treatment of staff seconded to her office. One of those was the head of the Department of Conservation.
I made a statement yesterday and the issues were resolved over 12 months ago.
In that statement, she said concerns were being raised about working relationships and that it wasn't running as smoothly as it might. One staffer left early. Also, the head of the Emergency Management Agency said he was aware there were concerns about relationships in the office.
I'm pretty proud of our crew and I'm really proud of our team. We're the kind of office that we run hard while we've got the ball, and I think it's been a pretty great place to work, to be honest.
This all led to a showdown in a select committee.
You have OIA'd everything under the sun and you have still yet to turn anything up. So have the opportunity to ask if there's anything that prohibits me as a minister from doing my job that the public entrusts me to do running.
With all due respect, the impact that ministers and the relationship with their staff is incredibly relevant.
Of us come to work every single day with a real focus on getting things done for New Zealanders. This isn't a blood sport for most of us.
But heads at...
Wow.
Let me say this. This actually leans me to more thinking about the talking point that National was trying to say, because Kiri Allan said really clearly, you've OIA'd everything, you've found nothing, there's nothing to see here. Simeon Brown's response is, I think there's something to see here. In other words, he still went straight back to the relationship with staff in the office, whereas Kiri Allan's just said, you haven't turned up anything yet, show me the money. Yeah. You haven't turned up anything, therefore there's no claims to made. And then Simeon Brown made the claim again. I'm going to play it again so you see that. Yeah, and that says to me, enough of the talking points get out. It's like throw enough shit, some will stick. That's why it feels a bit more dirty politics today to me. Have a listen again. She gets to the end of her challenge, says you can't prove any of it, and then he throws it out there like he can prove it.
Committee.
You have OIA'd everything under the sun and you have still yet to turn anything up. So have the opportunity to ask if there's anything that prohibits me as a minister from doing my job that the public entrusts me to do running.
With all due respect, the impact that ministers and the relationship with their staff is incredibly relevant.
Of us come to work every single day with a real focus on getting things done for New Zealanders. This isn't a blood sport for most of us.
But heads at the mega ministry, MB, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, today backed Allan. Yeah.
From time to time, we fall short, and we'll have a conversation about that. That's entirely appropriate.
We have a really good open relationship, and I have had far more challenging ministers to deal with in the past.
A challenging first day back for Allan after taking some mental health leave after breaking up with her fiancé, former RNZ presenter Marnie Dunlop.
Need a little break, a little heartbroken.
Kiri Allan wasn't the only minister in hot water today.
So this is the bit on Jantinity after her misleading misleading Parliament. She was found not guilty of any sort of official charges, but still was asked to apologise. We're not really going to talk about this tonight because that seems to be a story that's done. But I'll play you the 60 seconds of this just so everyone's up to date.
Education Minister Jan Tinetti was found not guilty of misleading the House when she failed to correct the record after finding out her staff had been interfering with the release of the Ministry of Education's data.
The powerful Privileges Committee ruling Tinetti was not guilty because her actions arose from a high degree of negligence on her part, not an intention that the House be misled.
It's not the best.
It's not the best a great win, is it?
Yeah, you're fucking useless, so we'll let you off. But still,
my view is that was because she was too ignorant to have been malicious. And that's an indictment on Minister Tinetti.
Was this a rookie mistake from a senior minister?
I will apologise to the House having seen the report. That is all I am going to say at this stage.
And apologise she did.
I accept the committee's findings and I apologise to the House.
One of the day's silver linings, one ministerial mess mopped up.
There you go. All right, Joey, let's get into Kiri Allan. Your thoughts?
Right.
That's now we've got a bunch of information, her words as well as Simeon Brown's accusations.
Absolute fucking beat up. I just want to acknowledge one thing here, right? So Kiri Allan's obviously had a tough time of things, had to take a break.
Yeah.
Her speaking to Simeon Brown in that inquiry, wow. That is a woman with some steel in her backbone.
Yeah.
Like to come out of something like that and to come into an inquiry like that and just... There's a couple of people in the chat using the word mana, and I think 100%. I mean, it just feels really tactical that they are just picking at some key government ministers, just throwing shit at the wall, trying to tie them up in inquiries and that sort of thing. Yeah, it seems shitty, man. Really shitty.
I think that. I mean, maybe the good story out of this, maybe it's not good news, I don't know. But part of the good news out of this is the media is reporting, like the two major government agencies have said nothing to see here. The minister has said nothing to see here. The OIAs haven't turned up anything, and the media is reporting that. So I don't suspect you will see this last for very long. I don't suspect you will see this do very many news cycles, because even the most ardent opponent of Labour, I think, if they're fair, can still look at it and go, well, just show us the evidence. Okay, show us the evidence, Simeon, or shut the fuck up. I mean, that's really where we're at. Show us the evidence or shut the fuck up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's more to this story, but not in the way that anybody wants, right? So just a lot of the stuff around this story stinks.
Yeah.
It absolutely stinks. The timing, how it got into the media cycle, how it got into the media and that sort of thing, and who brought that story in. I see. I'm going to chuck up a few comments because it kind of speaks to that as well. DIY Guru here. I want RNZ to be investigate. This stinks to high heaven.
Because they were calling for a snap election, is that right? Because of Jan Tinetti, who's been seen to make a stupid mistake, and because of Kiri Allan, who there's nothing to see, as far as we know right now. And I'll always put that addendum on there because things might change tomorrow, but as we're seeing it right now, there's nothing to see. And there you go, Jane Patterson. So calling for a snap election because of those two. What?
Yeah, that's just insane. Like, oh. You know, and I mean, they've got a couple of wins, right? They've taken out a couple of ministers, but we're looking at the shade that was thrown at Mahuta, cleared. Tinetti, let's give her kind of cleared on that one. Kiri Allan,
no, well, you can say cleared of misleading, cleared of doing anything nefarious, maybe just a bit of an idiot, which I'm not saying is good, but
that's not a win.
What she's done is going, oh, sorry, officer, I didn't realize it was a 30 while she was doing 50. I mean, that's not okay. Mind you, that would still be a crime. But you know what I'm saying? It's ignorance rather than absolute nefarious action.
Is it just me looking for patterns that aren't there when I say that they're looking to pick people off?
I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I would respond to that by probably saying you can only be picked off in general if you have something to be picked off for.
Yeah.
Like if Nash had never done anything, then he couldn't have been picked off. So are they looking to pick them? It's a chicken and egg argument. Are they looking to pick them off, or have they found some terrible actions by some politicians and they're using that to pick them off? I don't know.
Oh, look, I'm not going to shed any tears for Nash. You know, I've been pretty clear on what I think of Michael Wood being a fucking idiot. So I mean, that, you know, Michael Wood was someone that was spoken about as being a really, really effective minister, and then he just did some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen. But yeah, they've got a couple of wins, and it is working for them. So if they can tie together this narrative of look how incompetent, look how compromised all of these ministers are. But I mean, if we just zero in on Kiri Allan's thing again, like I've been very clear in the past, like parliamentary services and people that have worked for ministers over the years have had a very, very rough time. There has always been a culture of bullying, and I think parliamentary services have done a sterling job at clearing house and establishing a rule set and making sure that people feel that they can be moved and they can say things. I think they have processes.
Yeah.
And if there was a sniff of you know, it being a bad workplace in Kiri Allan's electorate office and that sort of thing, absolutely. Stand with the workers, that sort of thing. Yeah. But it's not there. It doesn't pass the sniff test.
As Jeremy says, the only time Nats care about facts is when it helps them out. Also, I'm not going to use your corrected message there, JK, because I like this one better. JK sent us a second message correcting a spelling mistake, but I do like Nats have a thing for targeting women MPs. I like the targeting better. I think they do target women MP quite a bit, actually. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing in this day and age to be targeting women MPs. I think, you know, it's not what we should be doing.
V-Bunch here says, I'm sure that Nats are waging campaigns against individual ministers and try and pick them off one by one. And Gary here says Kiri Allan owns all the money in that exchange and Simeon has zero.
Can I say this as well? If that's the case, and let's just look at this from, let's say, a National Party win, and they're picking off MPs and they're able to sell the narrative, accurate or not, that Labour is weak. Have you seen the polls at the moment? If National is selling the narrative that Labour is so bad, why the fuck are they doing so poorly in the polls? Why the fuck is their leader still at the same percentage points of preferred Prime Minister as he was when he started the leadership 15 months or so ago? If Labour is really so bad and National can't dominate them in the polls, what the fuck does that say about National?
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to be the realist in the room, but again, we love preferred Prime Minister polls, but they are absolutely pointless. It's just a popularity contest for that one, even though we love to mention how unpopular Mr. Luxon is. What is he now? 16%?
It depends what poll, but in the teens. But I do think that there is an element of your vote for the leader, and I think, and I could be wrong, people will tell me I'm wrong, but I think that the last 3 or 4 or 5 governments that have gotten in, the leader of that party has always been leading the preferred Prime Minister stats. You haven't seen it the other way around. Jacinda in 2017 may have been different because we know that was really close. But actually, the normal run of events is the preferred Prime Minister, the party who has the person leading that stats, is the party who ends up being that government. So I agree with you, Chewy, but there is there is at least a trend to show in that. And if he's polling poorly, that is not a useful metric point for the National Party.
God,
right.
Imagine, just flip comment. Imagine using Simeon Brown as your attack dog.
Yeah.
That's your option. We need a real junkyard dog, a real fighter. Get that man in the short pants over here.
Get him. It's like he looks like he's been working as a student, serving petrol in a petrol station.
Yeah.
He's got
that kind of look. He constantly looks like he's between interval. He's between periods. He's trying to find out where his latest biology class is.
Rowe has
I'll
just said
stop bullying
in the latest polling, Luxon is 16%. Okay, let's move, shall we? Because we want to follow up on a story that we've been talking about, well, for a few months now, but the follow up on the story from last night, which is the story about David Farrier and Sean Plunket having his charges dropped. We talked a bit about this last night. David Farrier wrote a webworm about it. He's done something else again today, and I thought it's worth highlighting because we were talking last night about the idea of the precedents this sets, and what does a person need to do to be considered vulnerable by the family courts. Well, it seems that David Farrier has asked a similar sort of question. He goes through to talk about, what actually happened. He talks about what was wrong, and this is what he's done. He's actually the police have written to him on why they dropped the charges. Okay. Good morning, David. Mr. Plunket posted the temporary protection order on his Twitter feed showing your name as an associate respondent deemed not a vulnerable person and redacted the applicant and respondent names, albeit poorly. Another individual has then used Photoshop to remove Mr. Plunket's redactions and reposted it in the comments section. Mr. Plunket therefore didn't publish a vulnerable person's name at the time of posting, so would come under Section 11B1 as it didn't breach Section 11B3 or Section 11B4. Ngā kind regards, Danny Farrell, Detective Constable, Wellington District.
Oh, so what all you have to do to get around it. Get a minion to do it.
And this is kind of what David Farrier goes on to say. So this is the applicable parts of law on publishing court proceedings. I'm not going to go through this in its entirety. You guys can go to webworm.co yourself and have a look at it. Right, but obviously David's gone through all of these things, and then he's gone through the applicable parts of the law on a definition of a vulnerable person. And as I said last night, it's not just about being underage. A person in respect of whom the family court has jurisdiction under Part 1 or 3 of the Protection of Personal and Property Rights Act. A person in respect of whom a personal order has been made under the Protection of Personal and Property Rights Act of 1988. A person subject to a property order under a donor of an enduring power of attorney who was involved in proceedings under. A person who is a proposed patient or restricted patient within the meaning of the Mental Health 1992 Act. A person who was applied to family court for the issue of declaration, etc. A person who was proposed. So you can see there's lots of reasons why someone can tick the box of being vulnerable, not just age, like was said last night. So then what happened after, you can go through this yourself, it's on David Farrier's site. What happened after that is David Farrier then responded to the police. And the police are saying, basically the police are saying, yes, he published it, but he redacted it. You're not vulnerable. Someone else took off the redactions. Nothing to see here. That's what the police have kind of said. This is David Farrier's response. Thanks, Danny. My reading of 11B1 and 3 is that a person can't publish proceedings of the family court where a vulnerable person is a party, and then he lists it, or the applicant, and then he lists it, not simply that it must be the vulnerable person's identified directly in order for the publication to be unlawful, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm also surprised to learn that the publication in which redaction has been so poorly executed as to allow the recovery of redacted information is somehow immune. Excuse me. As journalists, we are often reminded we must avoid publishing details, even ancillary, that might readily lead to the identification by third parties of vulnerable persons or those subject to a suppression order. I can't help but wonder how poorly redacted must be executed before it simply isn't actually redacted anymore. This experience has certainly surprised me based on my training and experience as a journalist. Regards from David. And then he goes on to talk about, that's his take on it, hoping that he can put in the rear vision mirror until Michael Organ and Sean Plunket decide to team up again. Shit attracts shit. There might be a new t-shirt in that one. So I would not put it past them. He goes on to say he's not suing anyone, never has. And if anyone wants to know more about it, here's the link. So that's David Farrier's response today. The police have said, again, Plunket redacted it, and they say it, albeit poorly. Someone else revealed it, not Plunket's fault, and you're not vulnerable. And we said last night, the precedence that this said is, I think, a bit shocking. And secondly, I wonder if this could be challenged in court. You know, like the system where you go to your local court, then that goes to the High Court, and you can challenge. I wonder if this has any of that in it. I don't know. That's where we're at today, Chewy.
Yeah, I love this idea that you can just do something kind of half-assed and then get a minion to undo it, and you're completely blameless.
Yeah, for sure.
Completely blameless. It's a horrible precedent.
Because what you're implying is that people can now, I remember, I think it was Cameron Slater, putting out like pictorials of suppressed people's names and let people working it out, and that was deemed to be in breach. But if Cameron Slater had have just put out the name with, you know, biro over it, ballpoint pen over it, that someone could then work out, that would have been fine. That seems to be the anomaly that we're talking about pretty clearly.
Yeah. Plunket, what a dick. That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt.
Okay, we'll drop that one down. Plunket, what a dick. Karen Plunket, what a dick. I want to talk about something else tonight, unless there's anything we want to mention in the chat before we do that. Anything in there? JK says redacted using a yellow highlighter.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving, because I want to have a look at this. I don't know if you saw or have seen or have heard, Chewy, this new television show by Paddy Gower, who we've talked about once before. It seemed a bit, you know, we'll see how they go sort of thing, is what we said last time. Well, they did a piece last night on the trans community, and it's kind of I first think it's kind of a strange thing about kind of sorting out the trans issue. Like, just think about that. If you're part of the trans community, that people can sort out the issue that involves you. It does feel a little bit, I don't know.
This is my issue with some of the stuff that Paddy is doing. Like, it's a real mixed bag. Like, when he was talking about drug use and alcoholism and that sort of thing, that was about
personal connection. Personal connection.
It was personal. This is an issue that I am part of. When he then pivots to something that he's not part of and just wades in on a horse. I mean, do you have his tweet from the other day?
I'm going to show a bit of a clip shortly as well. Yeah, but look, I think the thing is, he does a show where he's talking about the issues. Paddy Gower has issues, and we all know that he has issues, but he's trying to have a play on words, saying he has issues to talk about. And one of the issues is the trans conversation. And I guess I'm thinking, you know, there are some things within the gender ideological conversation we can be having right now, but I don't know. It felt like the trans issue. What does that mean? You know, are we going to talk about the gay issue or the straight issue? Are we going to talk about the Muslim issue? You know, it seems putting a people group into a box and saying you're an issue in our society. It just smacked of sort of, I don't know, some idea that they thought was great out the back. In fact, I talked to some people in the trans community today, and let me read you. I'm not going to identify who it is because I haven't asked if I could, but let me read you one of the responses I got today. Paddy deciding to charge in as the trans white knight was pretty cringe.
Oh God, that's almost word for word from what I was saying. Paddy on a horse.
Yeah. More about this, and again, I'm not identifying who sent me this because I haven't asked them if I could. Regarding Paddy Gower, I just felt it was ill thought out and really shitty timing. The trans community has been enjoying a whole bunch of big wins lately, and this was a bit of a slap in the face from some middle-aged white guy riding the coattails of the Posey Parker controversy. Really, it's just attention we don't need or want. He didn't contribute anything of significance and just made the TERFs nuclear with rage over it, and trans people will and are copping all the heat and blame for it as usual. It would be nice if guys like Paddy asked first and engaged with our trans groups like Gender Minority and Rainbow Youth. Now that I've said all that, the thing about this is everyone was fucked off with Paddy Gower, and I'll show you some stuff on Twitter shortly about that. Let's first of all have a look. This is from Paddy Gower's own Twitter feed, and this is what he put out sort of as a, why can't we talk transgender without losing our shit? It's funny, why would you redact the word shit on Twitter?
It's
an ugly, toxic shouting match. We don't actually learn anything. Well, tonight we have a proper conversation and learn a lot. Do we now? Let's have a listen to it, to his setup and what he had about it.
Don't actually learn anything. Transgender people and their supporters have become the target of such vitriol, death threats and hate. And anyone who doesn't get it, who has questions and who makes mistakes in the process, risks getting shut down and cancelled. Well, tonight I say it's time to calm the farm. So tonight we are going to ask questions, we're going to have an open conversation, and we are going to learn a hell of a lot. And we're only going to mention Posey Parker once, and I already did that just then. Now, at the heart of this are real people, real families, grappling with stuff that is incredibly complex and can be insanely difficult. We've got to be able to talk about it. This is an issue for all of us.
Is it though? Is this an issue for all of us, Chewy?
No, I think it's a curiosity for some people. And at both ends of the spectrum, like a malicious curiosity and an actual genuine curiosity.
So here's the thing, yeah. I just wonder if some producer at the back of his show and Paddy Gower was like, "Hey, people don't understand what's going on," because this is part. I'm not going to play all of it. I'll give you the idea. This is a segment. I actually didn't watch the whole show, but I had a look at 3 on demand or whatever they're called, 3 now, and I skipped through it to find the bits. This is one of the bits they did where Paddy Gower, I mean, I only can use the word mansplains to all of us, the idea of the trans community and of, you know, who they are and what the dictionary definition of things are. And this is what he did.
So the first thing to be clear on is sex and gender are different. Sex is anatomy, it's what you were born with. Gender, on the other hand, is what you identify as, who you are.
So I'll put this like in the background, let's playing on this, because my question was really, do we still have a society? And I don't know this because I'm in the weeds on these conversations. Yeah, you can see he's explaining every single term, and he's trying to explain what the medical side of it is and all of that in a nice little 3-minute package. Do we still need this in society today? Because I watch this and I go, so here's 3 minutes of probably NZ funding or Discovery funding that feels patronizing, like you're talking to a bunch of 5-year-olds about, you know, things they don't know. So my first question is, do we need to have this explained to us by Paddy Gower? Do we? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if we do, is he the right person to do it, or is this slightly more patronizing than helpful, Joey?
I don't have a problem with just here are the baseline terms that we're going to be using. Not everybody, like we've talked about this before, right? You've got to bring people along with you. You've got to have a common term of reference for stuff. Not everybody is going to be as plugged into this issue as a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. So if Gran, who has never come across this before, gets an education about it, good.
Is she watching this?
She could be. But I think when you're talking about broadcast television, if this is their first point of contact, it's good to have a baseline, in my opinion.
All right. Well, that's why I was saying maybe I'm in the weeds, because I'm like, do we really need to hear this? Is this something that society
I would
needs
be
to
rolling
hear?
my eyes because, you know, I'm way further down the track than Paddy is, apparently. You know, I've had conversations with trans friends and stuff like that. And you know, this is what annoyed me about that initial tweet, right? As he said, it's impossible to have a conversation about trans issues without people screaming. I've asked some really clumsy, kind of undelicate questions so I can get a better understanding. And trans people have been incredibly generous and patient with answering these questions of me as I try to get better. You know, it's this. He was both sides.
Yeah, well, that's one of the criticisms. Let me also say in the chat already, asking to my questions, alas, Pat, yes, people still don't know. Sai says for some parts of the population, like my parents, this was a really good quick breakdown.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm coming from.
So therefore, okay, so I accept that. Like I said, I'm in the weeds, right? I don't need it, and I was wondering if others did. Yes, they do. So now the second part of my question was Paddy the right person to deliver that to them? Is he more of a like he's less threatening than having, let's just use the term, trans activist up there explaining to grandma and granddad what it was, or like they did quite an interesting interview with a trans woman and explaining life. They had actually 2 interviews, 2 trans women. They had conversations with one who was struggling to go to get the treatment, and one who was, I think, pretty much gone through the treatment in its entirety. So they were represented in the conversation, but it didn't feel like they were represented as well in the sort of this is the defining part of it. They told their stories, but not necessarily in their explanation. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would be happy to accept Paddy there as as long as he's not positioning himself as a fucking expert, that would be my worry there. Like if he's saying, here are the things that I have discovered while learning about these things, maybe I'll bring you along with me. You know, that I think that position is fine. But yeah, his role should be facilitating other people's stories so people can better understand and empathize what's going on. Because like for a lot of people, we've talked about this with the parliamentary occupations and stuff like that. Like people like you and I that watch these things, it doesn't come as a surprise when something like the counter protest for Parker Posey happens, right?
Yeah.
We knew the feeling that was bubbling along there. We knew the things that had happened overseas with her, the positions that she had, the people that she associated with and her supporters and all of that sort of thing. But for mum and dad who just watched the broadcast news, suddenly there's a bunch of weirdos yelling at this blonde woman. What's going on? It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, okay.
So
okay.
I'm more defending Paddy than I thought I would.
Well, you're not going to defend him when I play this next bit, especially as a stand-up comedian, because I'm going to play for you. And I think that TV3 has this magic trick where they don't let you watch footage off their website, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to hear it. So let me just bring it up. Let me bring it up. You're not going to be able to see it. No, see, in this part here, there's actually footage that I can see. You guys can't. But have a listen to this joke made. I don't know. Listen to this joke made about transitioning. Here we go.
Hey, Paddy. I actually think it could be time for you to transition into the next segment of the show.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm more than ready to affirm that this is my own program, and now is the time for something or someone that doesn't worry me out there. It's time for No Issues.
So if there's no other reason to say this was a pile of shit, there was that. It wasn't even a dad joke; it was a granddad joke, perhaps.
Weak.
It was awful, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I also said that this pissed off everybody. Right? Mm-hmm. Everybody was pissed off by this. So it's interesting to see in the chat people talking about this was maybe good for, grandma, whatever, the grandparents and stuff, because if you go onto the internet, and there's going to be a few rough tweets shown here if you're of a sensitive nature, but I'm showing you how it pissed off everybody. You had the turf world being nuts. Anti-woman activist Paddy Gower shuts down comments from everyday Kiwi women. Thanks, Paddy, the ultimate woman hater. So this is because there was no comments allowed on the videos, right? Okay. An intersex condition is not the same as someone who calls themselves trans. I should make clear to our audio thing, I'm reading people's tweets right now. These are not my opinions or the opinions of the management. If this is Gower's attempt to shed light on a contentious issue, all he has done is mislead the public by conflating a medical condition with a psychological one. And one more, Paddy Gower supports the mutilation of children. So that part of the internet was pissed off. But then also the other side of the internet wasn't particularly stoked about it either. Did anyone in the New Zealand trans community actually ask for this? Because I sure as heck did not, says Caitlin. Planner Walk says, there's something about this that rubs me the wrong way. It feels very much like a cis person doing a both sides. I used to be on the side of why can't everyone be calm and reasonable? But then I realized the shit many trans people often have to go through, especially online. Mm-hmm. This one says, not Paddy Gower being like, this is an issue for all of us. No, actually, it would be better if you stayed out of trans people's business. If you're going to frame it as a both sides thing and mention cancel culture, and finally, creepy little Paddy Gower trying to stir up anti-trans hysteria is so on form that nobody is even surprised. So everyone was unhappy with this. And I guess as a broadcaster, one of two things, you kind of go, there's that old adage is, you'd rather have someone talking about you than not talking about you. So if they're talking about you in a grumpy way, that's better than not talking about you at all. Or you'd go, holy shit, we annihilate 100% of our audience. So there's a couple of things to think about there. But it seems that the world over did not like this wherever you sit on this conversation.
Yeah, and in some things you'd be like, cool, that's me in the middle, annoying everyone. But yeah, I think Paddy's not good at Twitter. If he does it himself, he's terrible at it. If he gets someone else to do it for him, they're not good at this. Like this week alone, I've seen him piss people off with this and comments about the teachers' union, just devastatingly bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get the feeling from a lot of the trans community that they're sick of being an object, that they just get kicked around for a little bit and then it dies down.
The trans debate, like let's debate this thing. Now I'll say it again. I think there are some conversations to be had, or maybe even some debates around, the gender ideology, that kind of stuff. But the trans community is a community. Like the gender ideological conversation is broader. It's not necessarily aiming at one group of people, whereas the trans community is a group of people. That's like the Māori community or the retired community. It's a group of people. Talking about retirement sort of thing, or the retirement age is different from talking about retired people. It's a different way of looking at it. And it feels like when we talk about the trans issue or the trans problem or whatever, you're talking about the people issue or the people problem, as opposed to maybe a broader conversation around, science or biology or even fucking sports, as little as that really matters, or whatever, which seems to be a bit broader. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just get the sense that things were just starting to die down, and then he wades into this again. Like, New Zealand is a small place, and I get the sense of a fatigue or weariness from trans people. They're like, oh shit, not this again. We're already seeing incidents overseas because of this debate, where if a woman goes into a bathroom, there's a perception that they're getting checked out. Are they a real woman? Maybe they're not presenting in the right way to use this bathroom, and we're such a small place, it wouldn't take much for that to take root here. Conversations around bathrooms and grooming, the language that's coming in from overseas, because that's where the anti-trans people are taking their cues from, is the overseas movement. They're just people. Just let people be people.
So there's three kinds of people in the world, Chewy. There's people who speak as they think, who speak after they think, or speak before they think. People who speak before they think are always well sort of thought out, and they sit on it and then they speak. People who think after they speak are fucking morons, and they never realize. I tend to be one of those people who think as I speak. And what I've just realized is I think my uncomfortability with it was, as I was just talking there, I realized it. If I was to say to you that we were having a debate, or we were talking about treaty issues, that feels very different from saying we're talking about the Māori issue. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Māori issues feels like it's pointing at people. Treaty issues feels like it's talking about legislation and government, and it's broader, and it's not necessarily aimed at one group of people, even though it really impacts that one group of people. And I think talking about trans like it's one of Paddy's issues does feel like it's really pointing at people rather than something broader. And that's why it's a bit ugly. I'm not saying you can't have conversations around broader issues to do with gender ideology and stuff, but it's so targeted at one group of people that it feels icky. And I do this a lot. If you change out that group with another group, it feels wrong.
Gays, what are they about?
Let's talk about that Asian issue. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, what? It feels wrong.
Yeah, I know what you mean about picking another group as like, just roll back the clock to something that's not quite as contentious, something that we have discussed to death and kind of moved on with. There's not as much stuff weaponized at say just the larger homosexual community. We had that contentious debate and we've moved on, and we almost don't refer to it in the same way as we used to. And my hope is that if people just carry on, and my belief is the majority of people, that's all they want, is to carry on and not be dicks to each other.
Yeah, don't be dicks.
People might ask some clumsy questions as they've never come across it before, but yeah, there's some people, and I'm not even going to say both sides because it's one side, that are literally debating the existence of a group of people.
Yeah.
and that's, if you've got any sense of history, has got to be worrying. Just don't be dicks to people.
Yeah,
and
I did.
Paddy, stop being a clumsy buffoon.
I like, when I say I don't like the thought of it, but I like the descriptive of the anonymous, person within the trans community that I've been messaging through today, when they said the knight. You don't have to be the knight for every issue, Paddy Gower. The reason, as Chewy said, that the drinking and that kind of stuff worked so well was there was a personal issue. You could speak to it personally. You can't speak to the trans conversation personally. It's not your conversation. It doesn't mean it can't be reported, because, to be honest, Chewy, we do it all the time. We talk to issues and about things that aren't personally us. But this is just a different one at the moment, especially when you hear the trans community saying, "Leave us alone. Stop talking about us." It's a little bit like you back in the 60s, the young receptionist that got pinched by the bosses, and she's just like, "Just please ignore me. I just don't want any attention from you. I have to sit here. I have to be in this office. I want to be here. I'm a part of this community, this group, this workplace, but please just ignore me." And what we're doing constantly is we're metaphorically pinching the bum of the trans community and pointing arrows at them, when it seems like, as we've just read, they're saying, "Look, we're okay. Leave us alone. We're just living," Yeah. Sorry about that. Metaphorically pinching the bum. That might be a bit inappropriate for some, but
Look, I'm going to say, like, the Paddy Gower one about his drinking was an incredibly powerful piece of TV.
Agreed.
And yeah, you can't take that away from him. But he stumbles into things that he did. Like, I mean, we have talked about trans issues on the show as two straight white men. We talk about things that sometimes we aren't the best people to talk about it. But I think we've always tried to be as sensitive as we can, and we've tried to talk to people in those groups to make sure that we are on base. I know I certainly have.
Yeah.
And it just didn't say, like, he didn't do it good enough. Do better.
Yeah. And you always have to remember, when we talk about marginalized groups, I mean, you still are ginger, and I certainly grew up ginger, and we know that is the most marginalized group. So we can give a perspective to it. It may not be the same perspective, but it's a perspective.
Even, you want to talk about how oppressed my people are, the gingers. Even the sun hates us. so
Both the SUN and all the SONs as well. People just in general.
Yeah, I'm going to finish off on one thing, because I kind of mentioned about Paddy wading into a debate about teachers, the teachers strike and that sort of thing. And there was a bit of backwards and forwards about his use of language. Basically, he took the position that the strike, the union leaders were throwing people under the bus and not having the best interests of children in mind. And people really got their back up and said, that these union leaders are teachers, right? You dick.
Yeah.
But this is how incredibly tone deaf it was. Someone put through some information about the union and who the leaders of the teachers union are and their back history. And this was his response: "I fully understand this. No need for me to read. Thanks, though."
Oh, God.
Like, just put the keyboard away, walk away from Twitter, Paddy. Bad. If you want to go to his Twitter and actually go through the quote tweets, there is some gold there. There is some gold.
Some gold in them there tweets. Hey, speaking of gold, I want to say thank you. It won't be on our board, to Dave Finnegan. I'm just looking at my emails over there. That's why I'm looking away from you, Chewy. Dave Finnegan, during the show, has signed up to be a patron. How about that, Dave? You'll be on the
nice.
on the bill. You'll
Thanks,
be on the
buddy.
billboard on on Monday night. And before we go into our 25 minutes of tangents as we try and wrap up the show, a huge thanks to our current patrons, and Dave will be on there on Monday. And if you want to be a part of what we do, if you've enjoyed tonight's show, and look, to be honest with you, I've been fully busy this week, so I haven't really done a lot of clips and stuff. I normally say, you can share our clips, you can do other, I'm going to spend a bit of time in the studio tomorrow morning, making some edits of the last 3 shows. So there'll be some stuff going out tomorrow. You can come on board and you can be a part of what we do in Patreon, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. You can also, from next week, actually, you have to follow us on Twitter. If you're not following us on Twitter now, do it now, because as soon as that Shopify site goes live, and I'm just waiting from the manufacturer to get some images of the blue T-shirts and of the hoodies as well. That'll be live, and you'll have a chance to support us that way as well. And also, speak your mind through your chest as well as we do that. That'll be going up. But the thing that we love about you guys, and we always appreciate, is I love seeing when people, like, I put a tweet out pretty much every night as to what's coming up in the show, and people retweet it. You can be our advocates. You can tell people about us. You can retweet our stuff. You can own our stuff. I see Spiderhoof took some of our things and put them on his TikTok. Spiderhoof texted me or messaged me as well and said, "Is that okay?" And I'm like, we'd probably be a bit hypocritical if we didn't let people use our stuff when our whole model of our show is based on watching other people's contents and talking about it. So
people want to react to our reaction.
Fill your boots.
And then we react to that.
It's a fantastic way that you can support us. And of course, remember, as it says on the bottom of the screen right now, this becomes an audio podcast. The audio podcast goes on Apple, goes on Google, and goes on Spotify. If you feel so inclined to listen to the audio podcast every now and again, we would prefer you did it on Apple, because it helps us in the charts and that does make a difference. But if you're not aware of it, maybe you miss the show once in a while, you pick up the audio podcast, you listen to it tomorrow on the way to work or on the way to university or school or whatever it is that you're doing. Lots of ways that you can get behind us and support us as we lead up to the election. There are just 3 of them. Chewy, sir, anything we want to get to from the chat?
People sympathising with our ranginess.
Yeah, I thought
and being very, very brave, admitting that they have birthed 3 ginger children.
Wow.
Yeah, well done, Emma. We stand with you, rangers.
I call my 16-year-old Big Ginge because the dog is Little Ginge. So there's Big Ginge and Little Ginge because that's the household. So.
Nakora C here says a lot of the old anti-gay rhetoric has just been moved on and lobbed at trans people. Absolutely.
Ironically, it's the same rhetoric that in America in the 50s and 60s was also lobbed at the black community. It's just the same words being with a different noun in there.
Look, the big one to watch for me is groomer, because that was the whole thing against the gay community, is that they were all pedophiles and they're all grooming, and now it's the trans people to cop that. It's just rehashing old ideas, and it's just importing stuff from overseas. And I like to think that Kiwis don't speak like that. Obviously, some of them do, but it's pretty obvious that it sticks out as an imported form of language. But yeah, don't be online too much, because it really ruins your ability to think. You know what? People are mostly good, and they just don't want to make people upset most of the time.
Speaking of groomers, if you want to have some entertaining viewing over the weekend, obviously you can rewatch our stuff. But you know who Emma Vigeland is from the Majority Report? She's done work on TYT and other bits and pieces as well.
Okay.
And there's a guy in America called Tim Pool. Have you heard of Tim Pool? He's sort of a guy who calls himself a classic liberal, but he's actually just a right-wing grifter. They had a bit of a debate during the week. And at the moment, what's going all over the left news commentary internet is how much Emma Vigeland destroyed Tim Pool. And there are very, very many clips that you should watch. And one of the ones that's most funny, and you can see the Vanguard boys up here are talking about it, Tim Pool calls Emma Vigeland a pedo, talking about the groomer thing. It's very, very, very funny. And if you want to just Google Emma Vigeland and Majority Report, there we go. We'll probably find it in there. There are lots of clips in the Majority Report where she spoke to here we go. Tim Pool melts down when asked about influencing the Texas shooter. There's just so much of it. Tim Pool struggles during military aid debate. It's if you're looking for something to see a really, really intelligent, well-versed, smart leftist or progressive or whatever the title that she would use, I don't know what it would be, just annihilate a right-wing grifter who has no substance behind his arguments, go and look up Emma Vigil and Tim Pool, and look, you'll thank me for it. Enjoy it over the weekend. It is absolutely chef's kiss. It's amazing. Oh, look, people have seen it in this thing as well. So says it was a really good watch. And Paul says, Emma, my hero, she made him look like such a diddle, such a good word. He got angry and he cried because she ran rings. Yeah, Emma out there doing good. So obviously we would have a similar audience, like politically wise. So many of you may have seen it, but yeah, it's well worth a watch if you want to see how a brilliantly intelligent, well-informed leftist takes apart an ill-informed, very shallow right-wing grifter. It's fantastic.
Awesome. You love to see it.
You do love to see it. The other thing you love to see is the Machine movie. Going to be watching that this weekend with Bert Kreischer. We'll have to see if we've got a big enough screen.
My boy Bert.
Yeah, Bertie boy.
Best compliment I ever got about my stand-up routine was that someone reminded someone of Bert Kreischer, and I've been riding that high ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very good. All right, Chewy, I think we're done. We're done for the week. There will be a bunch of clips and stuff coming up tomorrow, and I'll be probably putting some of them on the audio and video places through the weekend because I've had a busy week and I haven't done any editing for Tuesday, Wednesday, or today's show. I'm going to make clips from all of the shows, and I'm going to spread them through the next 3 days. So you'll be able to have lovely content right the way till you see us again on Monday night, which sounds lovely. All right.
Lovely.
I think we're done.
Cool.
Thanks
no
for
tangent.
Thanks
it's
for
a
being
lean
with us,
show.
team. It's a lean show. The show has lost about 60 kilos. Thanks for being with us tonight, team. We've enjoyed you very much. Thank you for the chat. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed that tonight. And go and watch Emma Vigil versus Tim Pool this weekend. Honestly, unless you're a Tim Pool fan, which I'm suspicious as none of you, you guys will fucking love it. It was absolutely hilarious. It's almost as hilarious as them watching all the commentary from the left-wing news sphere talking about the Emma Vigil versus Tim Pool conversation, because the commentary on it is even better. So I've given you a rabbit hole for the weekend, people. We will see you on Monday night for another edition of Big Hearing News. Stay safe. And remember, the Shopify will be up this weekend. Follow us on Twitter. You will find out more. Love you to bits. Mwah, and we'll see you Monday. Hooroo.
See you.